It's the single worst piece of legislation I have ever voted on in Congress. It will explode the national debt by $3 trillion. It'll take away healthcare from 10 million people.
Welcome to the Tara Palmeri Show. Today, we're digging into Trump's big, beautiful bill, that 940-page legislative monstrosity that could be signed into law by July 4th, despite being one of the most unpopular bills in modern history. I've seen the polling. The net favorability is -19 to -29, and that's across the board from polls like the Washington Post to Fox News. And yet somehow it's cruising through Congress on the thinnest of majorities. One Republican Senate source said it to me pretty bluntly. It's too big to fail. But that doesn't mean lawmakers aren't up at night sweating about what's buried inside of this thing. I sat down with Democratic Congressman Jake Auchincloss to walk through the hidden landmines and to ask a question that's been keeping me up at night personally. If this thing passes, what happens to the healthcare marketplace for small business owners like me? I use Obamacare to get my health insurance. And also I'm wondering, why aren't Democrats fighting harder to stop this? Could it be that they want this bill to pass for political reasons? Stick around. This one's messy, high stakes, and way more personal than anyone in Washington wants to admit. Thank you, Congressman Auchincloss, for joining the show. It's great to have you, especially on this week when I think so many of us are scratching our heads as we see the big, beautiful bill just barreling through Congress, possibly to be signed before July 4th, which is just 4 or 5 days away from recording this on Monday, June 30th. I wanted to ask you, though, when you first read this 940-page bill, and I'm assuming you did read it, although you can tell me if you didn't, what was your honest, unfiltered reaction?
Tara, first, thanks for having me on. I am still making my way through the Senate version, but I can tell you my reaction to the House version when it passed about a month ago. It's the single worst piece of legislation I have ever voted on in Congress. It will explode the national debt by $3 trillion. It'll take away healthcare from 10 million people and raise health insurance premiums for tens of millions more. And it will do both those things in service of giving tax cuts to people who don't need tax cuts.
So what would you call the bill if you could call it something in 2 words?
Can I swear on this podcast?
Sure, but keep it light.
I'm joking. What I call it is Medicaid cuts, because that is where Democrats need to be laser focused for the next 18 months. Of the top issues that the American public really care about, that they walk into the ballot box thinking about, healthcare is the one on which Democrats have a trust surplus with voters. And that's because for 15 years, we've been battling to expand coverage. The new frontier is now to lower costs for healthcare. Well, this bill is going to do the exact opposite. It is going to raise costs for healthcare. And because voters are inclined to trust Democrats on healthcare, this needs to be where we focus. We have to go out there across this country and explain to people that their premiums are about to get more expensive, the at-home care for their parents is about to get more onerous, the primary care access for the children is about to get less accessible, and it's all because they needed to hook up the top 5% with hundreds of thousands of dollars in additional annual income.
Yeah, I am looking at it personally because I am now a new small business owner. I just stepped out as an independent journalist. I signed up for healthcare through the Obamacare market. And I'm just wondering myself, like, how am I going to be impacted? My coverage, my premiums. It's insane to actually get coverage under $400. I think that's about how much I'm paying a month. I had to promise I wouldn't get pregnant or use any psychological services, which is kind of insane when you think about it as a 37-year-old woman. But it's really interesting. I mean, what do you think for someone like me? How will I be impacted? I'm not on Medicaid. Yeah. Just a small business owner who went to the Obamacare market to buy health insurance.
It's like buying auto insurance and having to promise you won't get into an accident, right? You're like, well, yeah. Why am I buying it?
I'm like, sure, I'll self-soothe. Cool.
Let me say 2 things to that. So first of all, to your direct question, how does this affect someone like you? The short answer is it's going to raise your premiums. And here's why. When you take people off of Medicaid, you don't stop them from getting sick, right? And because of a 1980s law called EMTALA, when someone gets sick, they're still able to go to the emergency room and seek care. And by law, those hospitals have to provide that care. The problem is emergency rooms and broadly inpatient services generally are the most expensive sites of care. So what we're doing is we're taking people who were on Medicaid and we're getting some amount of primary preventative wraparound care. And now we're saying, you take that chronic condition, you let that chronic condition unspool until it becomes acute. You're going to go to an emergency room and get very expensive care. That increases the overall amount of healthcare spending in the system. Of course, that individual who just sought that care can't pay for it. They're uninsured. So the hospital now has this uncompensated care, and they have to fill that deficit through what's called cross-subsidization. They basically charge the commercial health insurance companies or Medicare more money. And that filters down into higher premiums for all Americans. So if you're getting insurance through your employer, if you get it through the ACA exchanges, if you get it through Medicare, all of us will pay more overall money. And here, candidly, Tara, here's where Democrats have more work to do also. Because if we go back out there in 2028, and if our healthcare message is simply a return to the status quo of Medicare, Medicaid, and commercial insurance, that is going to be a very underwhelming message because people hate the healthcare system as it exists today.
Yeah, that's true.
And while Democrats have done a lot of work to make it better, we cannot rest on our laurels, nor can we simply say to somebody like you, an entrepreneur trying to make their way and take a lot of risk, that now you also have to take more risk in your health insurance sector as well. We have to lean in to lowering healthcare costs. Happy to talk about some ways that we can do that. But simply saying, hey, we're going to, subsidize the ACA more, that's not good enough.
Yeah, no, I've definitely thought about this, but I'm also looking at Democrats right now, and I just keep thinking to myself, they're not really fighting back against this bill. I mean, it is barreling through. It is happening so quickly, and yet I hear from Republicans, members, that they have anxiety about this bill. They've been told that the harm has been mitigated, but they're really nervous about these Medicaid cuts. They're really nervous about how this is going to impact their constituents. And yet I just don't feel like the Democrats have really done enough to make it known. The fact that I'm still scratching my head as a journalist trying to figure out what this is going to mean for me. Shouldn't there be like an uprising in some way? Shouldn't they be trying to stop this bill? I know they don't have a lot of power legislatively, but I just don't think it's breaking through. So I'm thinking to myself, do Democrats actually want Republicans to vote on this bill? Do they want them to take these hard party votes so they can win in 2026? And that is the cynic in me, because I am a political reporter. But part of me feels like it rings true in some way.
I'm on the Committee of Jurisdiction for Healthcare, and in the House, we did a 27-hour markup about this bill, and it was a political brawl. And I've seen our best arguments about this legislation, and I've heard the Republicans' best rebuttals and their best arguments about this legislation. And Tara, I am very confident that when we take this argument to the American public, we are going to win. And I'm not saying that because I'm a Democrat.
Why haven't they done it now? Why haven't they done it yet, is what I'm trying to say. Yes.
Two reasons. First, the bill hasn't even been drafted until the last 24 hours, right? So we literally don't even fully know what's in it until the Senate finishes their vote and it comes to the House. So, but we have to know the policy.
It's way along. You've seen it moving throughout the process.
And two, we have 18 months to go in this campaign. So I assure you, there is going to be a laser focus and a significant amount of resources put behind the impacts of this bill on rural healthcare, on energy industrialization, on cost of living for Americans, on the tax cuts to the ultra wealthy.
But it will already have passed. That's the problem. We'll already have passed.
Yeah, this was always going to pass. I want to be clear about that. When the second that there was a trifecta in November, there was literally nothing that was going to happen in Congress that was going to prevent the dear leader from getting his way. Republicans in Congress don't take their job seriously. You don't think that you could have pushed
someone like Senator Lisa Murkowski or Senator Collins in Maine or John Curtis in Utah? Like, you don't think you could have put the squeeze on them? Or some of these salt state guys like, LaLota or Lawler, these Republicans that are in New York or California. You don't think Democrats could have put the squeeze on these guys a little harder?
Well, the most effective thing Democrats could have done in the House would be to stay alive. So we lost in the House that vote by one vote, right? And 3 Democrats have died in office since January. So if we had had a full roster, you're right that we could have stopped that version of the bill. But I want to reiterate here, I've been in Congress for 5 years. My second day in Congress was January 6th when there was an actual insurrection and Donald Trump was on his way out and unpopular. And I still watch Republicans debase themselves by voting for him and against a free and fair election. Tara, there is nothing that Democrats in Congress can say or do that will have Republicans buck Donald Trump. He has created a cult of personality around for him. What we have to do is go to the American public and not just combat their bad ideas, but also offer our own good ideas. Because Americans know that Democrats don't like Donald Trump. They don't know what we are for. And that is the imperative that we have in 26 and 28. What do we want to do?
I really feel, though, the sense I'm getting from the people is that you are seeing a movement rising up, right? I mean, that is what you saw with Zohran Mamdani, right? That finally Democrats are winning back 18 to 34-year-olds. That's what they saw in when they actually looked through the ranked choice voting. The energy in the party right now, it's not with the moderates. It's not with the establishment. It's with the young Democratic socialists with a sort of eat the rich mentality. He just went on Meet the Press and said there should be no billionaires anymore. And this is the part of the party that's growing. And this is the part of the party that actually seems to be fighting the bills before they pass. I mean, what do you think about the fact that he has become a new leader in the party, and yet Hakeem Jeffries, who is the minority leader in the House, Chuck Schumer, and the others, they don't really seem to even want to acknowledge him.
Mamdani ran an authentic campaign, laser focused on affordability, and he did a great job of integrating in real life engagement with a dynamic social media presence. And for all of that, he is to be complimented. I think there is a habit, though, to read into off-year elections an entire mantra for the future of the party in on-year elections that I don't think serves us very well. The Democratic Party should not subscribe to either globalizing the intifada or socializing the grocery stores. That's not where the party is. And we certainly should not be socializing, or should not be associating ourselves with defunding the police. We should be a party of law and order, of faith, family, and the flag. And we should have an affordability agenda based on ideas that are going to lower the cost of living, particularly in housing and healthcare. And rent control does not ultimately make housing more affordable for the middle class. So New Yorkers are going to decide on who they want to lead them. But as a member of the Democratic Party nationally, we should not extrapolate from one election and bend our entire agenda towards democratic socialism. That's not where the median American is at.
But you get why they're a bit cynical right now when they have, more moderate Democrats in power and they just see Trump steamrolling them. And there's a lot of anger. I mean, there was no King's protests that I was covering in New York, and you felt that rage, that white hot rage.
So here's where I totally agree with you is I think Americans are fed up with the status quo. I don't know that they want combat from the left or combat from the right. Okay. I think the exhausted majority of Americans, about the 2/3 of Americans who are between the 40-yard lines of American politics, I think they want combat from the center. I think they want to see politicians who are willing to look at MAGA authoritarianism and say, we reject this blood and soil ethnic nationalism that you are pushing, but also look at the hard left and say that there is no room for anti-Semitism in this country. And we believe in middle-class capitalism that is actually going to lower prices for this country rather than continue to recycle some tired old ideas. And you're right that they're not hearing or seeing enough of that.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
The primary system. The primary system in this country drags both parties to their flanks, particularly when paired with gerrymandering and social media.
Totally. I do want to get back to the big, beautiful bill. What do you think when you hear someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who voted to pass the bill in the first round in the House, say that she was surprised that the bill doesn't have AI regulations for 10 years?
This is a major issue for me on AI. I'm glad you raised this. We had talked about how neither party is speaking to the big middle of this country in an effective way. It is my belief that the first party, the first set of politicians who take on the social media corporations, their attention fracking of our youth, their corrosion of our civil discourse, is going to build generational trust. And when we talk about AI regulations, the first abusers of AI are going to be Meta, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Discord, TikTok. You already got Zuckerberg out there talking about creating AI chatbots for kids to replace their friends. I got three little kids, Tara, 5, 3, and 2 years old. I don't want them to have AI friends designed by Mark Zuckerberg. I want them to have real friends. And I think there's a huge cohort of parents and increasingly young people who understand that they are being turned into products by the wealthiest, most powerful corporations in the history of the world. And politicians have done way too little since the 1990s to fight back against these digital empires that have been created. I was a co-lead of the bill to force TikTok to be divested, but that's step one. We have a lot more work to do on Section 230, on digital advertising taxation, on raising the age of internet adulthood. And the party that does that builds trust.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you said that, because I was just with a group of women, some new friends that I met this weekend, and a lot of them were telling me that they use AI to ask questions about their personal life. And it's interesting. Like I started asking the AI what it knew about me, and I was kind of creeped out, actually.
Yeah. Well, there's actually some good stuff here, though, because I was talking to a mental health clinic that was sort of pointing me towards the future of mental health therapy. And they were saying that you can do this alternation between human therapy and agentic therapy, where the human is doing some work, and then on off days, there's agentic therapy to kind of build on that. And, it's human in the loop type. Great. All that's, I want to see innovation there. What I don't want is for these social media corporations to take our kids' attention spans down to 7 seconds and sell them not one non-stream economy of scrolling that keeps them glued to their screens.
Yeah. The sort of common denominator, though, back to the bill, is that it seems like it's, one Republican put it to me, too big to fail, and that most people actually don't know what's in it, including your colleagues, right? Yeah. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene. And would you say that's a feature of it, for it to be too big for people to know?
Yes. And what this bill is about is Trump's will. I really can't emphasize this enough. Most members of Congress on the Republican side, as you said, know maybe the broad outlines that, it's Medicaid stuff, it's some clean energy stuff, it's some tax stuff.
Mm-hmm. But it's his entire agenda. It is his entire agenda. There is nothing else that they will pass. He has to pass it. He will be lame duck afterwards. And they were voted in to pass this bill, too, so they feel the pressure. It's a poison bill.
Well, to be clear, I think here I would wedge a little bit. They were voted in to work the will of Donald Trump. Republican primary voters only care about whether a member of Congress is working the will of Donald Trump. Ironically, though, those voters don't like this bill. And that's where I think congressional Republicans are very vulnerable in the midterms. Is on one hand, they get primaried if they don't work the will of Donald Trump. On the other hand, in their general elections, voters are going to lash out when they find out that at-home care just got a lot more expensive.
Yeah, according to polls, just a roundup of polls, basically, across the board, including Fox to Washington Post, 2/3 of Americans say they don't like this bill, and the more they learn about it, they don't like it. It has a net favorability rating that ranges from -19 to 29. And when asked if BBB will hurt or help, 49% say hurt, 23% said help. CNN's Harry Enton, who is known for making proclamations, bold ones, he said it's the most unpopular bill in history. I don't know if we can actually back that up, but it surely does not sound like a very popular bill.
No, it's hideously unpopular. And again, that's before Democrats spend about $1 billion telling people about it, which is going to happen.
I just think this is the frustrating part I get back to. Why didn't Democrats spend $1 billion telling people about it months ago? And it's because I see that they want Republicans to vote on this bill because they know it is political suicide. So they ultimately want the bill to pass because that will help them win in 2026. But even if they win in 2026, they won't be able to reverse this bill because Trump will veto anything they do. So it's like they're kind of making us swallow this because they didn't do enough.
Yeah, I think it's a little ironic and unfair to have a party line vote in the House and Senate and then blame the party that voted against the bill for the bill. This bill is Republicans' fault. Where I do think the onus is on Democrats is to come back out swinging, not just with a return to the status quo, but with better ideas. So we look at them trying to gut Medicaid, for example, right? If we come back out and we're just like, hey, we're going to increase the provider tax rate for Medicaid, well, that's underwhelming healthcare policy. What happens if we come out swinging against the health insurance corporations to take out the middlemen of drug pricing? Or if we come out swinging and use Medicaid to become the basis for automatic, basic, universal medical insurance at the state level and actually take some of the pressure off of employers and families and municipalities? What happens if we come out and try to make Medicaid the basis for Social Security for kids, right? The government spends most of its money on people over 65, very little money on people under 8. We should be setting up our kids for success with guaranteed health savings accounts, with guaranteed access to primary care. These are big ideas that we should be pushing. And this bill gives us that platform because it's so bad that it's going to key people in to how much they actually like Medicaid. And now it's incumbent on us to say, you like Medicaid? Great. Let's actually make it better now.
Is there anything in the bill that most people don't know about?
In the House version of the bill, there was a provision to give $1.5 billion in tax credits to buy silencers for pistols, which it's like a cartoon villain wrote it. I mean, you would be hard-pressed to think of a more nefarious policy. It will make mass shootings far more dangerous by making it harder for victims to discern the direction of shots. It is unclear whether it's going to survive the Senate in that form. I'm still tracking that. But it was a measure given fully to get the vote of one Georgia congressman who owns a gun store.
Okay, what is the most dangerous or misleading line item buried in this bill?
The most misleading is the general contention that they are trying to put in work requirements for Medicaid. And this is really what we brawled over in Energy and Commerce in the hearings. The Republicans say, hey, we're just trying to make sure that if you get Medicaid, you're working. They tried that in Arkansas and Georgia. And what ended up happening is they just kicked millions of people off Medicaid, including those who are working, because it's not a work requirement. It is a paperwork requirement. They're creating a whole new bureaucracy that's constantly pressuring some mom who has 2 kids with profound autism at home. Hey, are you working? Are you working? Are you working? Send us this receipt. Send us that form. Same thing with a senior with advanced chronic back pain. Are you working? Show us. And if you can't, they immediately kick you off the rolls. And you end up, as I said earlier, getting uncompensated care through the emergency room at greater expense for all of us. That core claim they are making about work requirements, which does poll pretty well, that is going to collapse as we make clear that it's not a work requirement. It is a paperwork requirement that is going to disenroll people who are actually working.
Okay, in this whole big, beautiful bill, is there anything beautiful you can find in it?
They had in there some bipartisan drug pricing measures that basically got tougher on health insurance corporations who are price gouging prescription drugs and particularly taking advantage of taxpayers through Medicaid. They all got kicked out in the Senate version in the bird bath. So now even that very, very faint silver lining has been extinguished.
Interesting. I will say there is one thing. People don't want to lose their tax cuts. We have pre-existing tax cuts that if this big, beautiful bill isn't passed, they will go back to the rates they were before 2017, and that impacts middle class and lower income people. There's also no tax on tips and overtime, which impacts a lot of working class people. What should we make of that?
This is where it's critical for Democrats to be clear about not just what we're against, but what we're for. We could have worked with the Republicans on a measure that extended the 2017 middle class tax cuts, the higher standard deductible. We would have wanted to expand the child tax credit, and we would have paid for it by increasing the marginal income tax rate from 37 to 39.6%, by closing capital gains and inheritance loopholes. Functionally, we would have been happy to craft with them a tax bill that was deficit neutral, that extended middle class tax cuts, and that asked the wealthy to pay a modest amount more. But they never wanted to do it. They just can't help themselves. Every time they have power, they cut taxes for the rich.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else you want to say about this bill that's coming down the pipeline? Anything else that's really concerning to you, or anything that you think could be reversible easily?
Well, the tax code part can all be fixed and should be fixed by either Democrat only or bipartisan consensus, because just like Americans are agreed that the status quo for healthcare is broken, they're agreed that the status quo with the tax code is broken. We should have a much simpler, much more fair tax code with higher inheritance and estate taxes on the very wealthy, with, again, higher minimum, higher marginal tax rates for the very highest earners. But then with more breathing room for the middle class and more family-inducing measures, get rid of the marriage penalty, expand the child tax credit, really just try to make the tax code short, simple, and fair.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, Congressman Auchincloss. I think you helped me understand this a little bit better. I know it may just pass before July 4th, remarkably. And then we'll feel the impacts soon enough.
Thanks for having me on, Tara.
Thanks for listening to the Tara Palmeri Show. I want to thank my producer, Eric Abinate, my booker, Jane Fusco, and my researcher, Abby Baker. If you like this show, please subscribe, rate it, follow, share it with your friends, leave a written review. That would be really great. If you like my reporting, go to tarapalmeri.com and sign up for my newsletter, The Red Letter, and you can get all of my original reporting straight to your inbox. If you become a paid subscriber, you can support my independent journalism. I'll be back again soon.